Speech titled My First Time and a Girl. My First Time and a Girl, Rich Haslam.
Well, my first time and a girl. And I know what you're thinking. Stop it. My speech is about my first time and a girl, but in a little bit different way. We all know that speaking in public, most people would rather face death than to do that. And for those of you who have already done so, I applaud you for looking death in the eye and choosing life instead. It really is a very fearful thing we do here. I am very nervous right now. Maybe you can't see it, but my knees are actually shaking quite a bit. Hey, but very seriously, I am a little bit nervous, as I've always been. Even though I teach and I speak to students all the time, this is different for some reason. Now, several weeks ago, I did my first presentation, and I was nervous then. And I don't know if you noticed, but I was trying to take a drink of water during that time. And I was actually very thirsty because I get dry in this cold air in here. And I had my bottle up like this, and I was shaking so much that all I got was a sip. And I was like, I need it. So I put it down and pretty much gave up. And sometimes we get so nervous that we also forget what we're going to say. So that's why I'm a little nervous. Actually, I was going to tell you that it gets easier as we go on, but it just seems that this second time I'm a little bit more nervous than I was the first. I'm actually forgetting my speech more than I was the first. And actually before that I gave a long speech, a training session, a 15-minute training session, and during that time I didn't use any notes. So I guess maybe I'm wrong in that we do get a little bit more nervous as time goes on. But let's talk about my first time. Speaking, that is. Now, even though I had been in the military for 12 years, and a police officer, which put me in harm's way, where several times I thought I was going to die. Like the time I was caught by surprise by a Pakistani mercenary who spun around quickly and with his automatic MP5 stuck it in my stomach and was starting to pull the trigger until I'll tell you about that some other time. That first time speaking was with a Dale Carnegie course that I took in public speaking some 35 years ago. That class was actually a lot easier than this one because we really didn't have to get up and talk that much in front of people, but we had to create a final objective. And my final objective for that class was to introduce myself to a girl that I didn't know. You see, at that time, I was dreadfully afraid of walking up to a girl that I did not know and talking to them. I avoided them like the plague. Now, it's not that I didn't have women in my life. I had a lot of lady friends and I had girlfriends. And most of the girlfriends that I had at the time actually asked me out initially. So I actually didn't have too many girlfriends. But I had to get up in front of the class and tell them that my objective was to introduce myself to a girl that I didn't know. Now, in that class was this really, really cute girl. Oh, I mean, she was cute. And the whole 6 months, I kept on looking at her, kept on looking at her. But I avoided talking to her. I wouldn't walk up to her. I'd walk on the other side of the room, and I avoided eye contact. And if she ever caught me looking at her, I'd look away real quick and pretend like I wasn't looking at her. And she probably thought I was some kind of weirdo at the time. But I had to get up in front of the class, and I had to tell them my objective, which was to introduce myself to a girl. Now, as I walked up to the front of the class, my knees were wobbling, my hands were sweating profusely, and I was shaking them out. My shirt was soaking wet. It was so wet that I could actually wash my hands with it and have enough left over for a cup of coffee. But there was something that day that was very special for me. And I didn't really realize it at that point, but something propelled me. As I was ready to tell the class that I had failed in my objective, something propelled me to walk to the back of the class, introduce myself to her and say, "Hi, my name is Rich. You're beautiful." And I quickly ran back to my chair, sat down, crawled into a hole, and wished that nobody would find me. I was so embarrassed. But then it was her turn to get up and to talk about her objective. And she told a story very tearfully about being raised by an abusive father who always told her that she was ugly and nobody would care about her. And her reason for taking the Yale Carnegie course in public speaking was so that she could learn how to speak in public, and so people would recognize her for who she was. Then she turned to me and said, "Thank you." Actually, I'm trying to hold back a tear. It was a very powerful moment in my life. And I realized at that point that our stories that we tell here are more than just stories or information. We motivate people to inspire them to make their lives better for themselves and for others. This is a great thing we do here. Thank you, Rich.